can we, what are some of the challenges that Laverne may face when he's, has the why of trust?
So Laverne, recently I was having a beer with a buddy and his friend joined us. And he says to me, "Hey, Gary, have you told Matt about this why thing that you do?" And I said, "Well, you know what? Instead of me talking to him about it, let's have him discover his why, and then we'll have a conversation about it." And so he sat and did his why, and it came up as trust, just like yours. And so I said, Matt, some of the challenges that you might face is that if people break your trust, it's going to be hard for them to ever get it back. And so he said, "You know what? That just happened to me today." He said, turns out this guy's the commander of the Kirtland Air Force Base. And he said, "It just happened to me today. One of my members of my group was in a car accident." And he said it was just a fender bender. And that's all he told me. But then I get a call from the commander of the guy that he hit. And he says, "Hey, what are we going to do about these two?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You didn't hear what happened, huh?" And he's like, "No." He said, "Well, this was a road rage thing where your guy ran my guy off the road and into a fence." And he's like, "Well, that's not what I was told." And so he said, "This guy didn't know that he could trust me, didn't give me all the information, made me look bad, and now I can never trust this guy again." And so your challenge is going to be what we talked about earlier, letting people know how important trust and the relationship is to you. Relationship with themselves, relationship with you, relationship with the clients. All of those things need to be addressed up front so that they don't break it. And once they know it, once you articulate that, Laverne, they can then raise their hand and say, "Yeah, you know what, Laverne, I believe the same thing. I'm not going to break your trust. I'm not going to let you down. You can count on me." And that's when you're going to have that team around you that just soars. You guys are going to do amazing things. Like Chris said, you have a wonderful why for a leader. You couldn't really have much of a better one. So you're in a great spot there. What is your title? What is your current title there?
So it's funny you ask. So right now, there's Generation 2, who's kind of the leaders of the company. We have, a couple different companies underneath, Sessler companies, in different industries. And right now, Generation 3, who's myself, my brother, and 3 of my cousins, we're kind of all intermixed within the company, different leadership roles here in the field or out in the office. Don't necessarily have a title right now. I'm kind of doing whatever it takes and wherever in the company needs me. And that's kind of where I'm fitting in right now. So, it's a mix of everything. For the first half of the year, I was out in the field on a job site. The last couple months here, I've been in the office working on the financial side and some of the estimating and stuff like that. But really kind of wherever I'm needed in the company is where I've been lately.
So when you're in those different roles, how important are the relationships to you?
So it's really important. And one of the things that you mentioned that makes a lot of sense or kind of triggered something was when you were talking about your friend that you had a beer with and the fender bender, he went and told other people that it's only a fender bender, right? So you're trusting people, right? If you get information from a colleague or somebody you work for or who's underneath you or anything else, you're taking that information and, at its face value, trusting them that that's right. And then you're moving that up the chain or going and talking to somebody else and you're putting your whole reputation on the line. So, one little thing, if they might not value trust and they're like, "Oh, it's not a big deal if he has the details or anything like that." And then, I turn around and convey that same message to somebody where I value the trust a little bit more, then I find that out. It's not necessarily the impact that, oh, he wasn't completely trustworthy with me or like fibbed a little or something like that. That's not a big deal, but it's the fact that I took that information and now my reputation is kind of on the line with other people that's been passed on to.
Yes.
I'm just going to jump in real quick. You know, it reminds me of a story about Alan Mullally. And when he took over as CEO of Ford, that the leadership team would keep coming to him and he would ask, how's everything going? What's going on for you guys? Where are you at? And everybody kept saying, green lights, everything's good, we're on track. And then month after month, quarter after quarter, they kept missing their numbers. And finally, you know, Alan, you know, has a heart to heart with them to say, hey guys, you know, what's going on here? We can't come in every week, every month, and every quarter being, you know, everything's green light. And then you get to the end of the quarter and say, oh, I missed my number. They don't compute. He goes, do you not trust me enough to know that I can handle the truth? I want the truth, and I want you to be able to have that relationship with me. Can you explain to me why this isn't happening? And what they said was the last CEO, every time they came in, if they had a yellow light or a red light, even worse, things weren't going the right way, they'd get yelled at. And so to avoid being yelled at, they would just always say, we're going to green light everything. So that's a really, you know, knowing this for you, Laverne, and having those conversations with people to say, you know, I need you to know that you can trust me even if we fail. That's really important.
And I
Chris?
think, you know, one other thing that I see in the value behind this, a couple of points, and it's true of every team, but boy, in a family-owned business, holy smokes, is this important? Because, you know, you have that history of knowing one another, or knowing when, you know, your brother said something at the Christmas party at your house that pissed everybody off. You know, I mean, you kind of remember all of that stuff, right? So you have a history, and it's very easy to fall into this notion of presuming that you know the motivation behind why somebody may be behaving a certain way or saying certain things or whatever. And what I found with this why discovery, and particularly when you do the why, the how, and the what, which are all three components of what we're calling the why OS, the why operating system, when you know all of those three components, what it really is saying is these are the things that are important to me. And they're not good or bad, right or wrong. There's nothing better than any other, right? But these are the things that are important to me. So for you and your family, knowing, and employees who work with you, knowing that trust is something you value highly, right? Well, if you're going to get anything done in this world, it's by and through people. And so you want to be, you know, engineers like to be efficient with things and with people. And the challenge for a lot of those kinds of folks is, you know, you really need to focus on being effective. And to be effective, you need to understand what's important to the other person, in addition to knowing what's important to you, so you can communicate what's important to you. And when you have those kinds of things going on, and then you create a healthy environment in which the people involved in the organization are there to support one another, bring out the best in one another, this is a great way to gain insight into the things that matter to everybody else in the organization. And by putting a label on it, Gary will probably talk a little bit more about the limbic brain and stuff, and, you know, these names that we give things, whether it's challenge or clarify or trust, they are verbal articulations of a feeling. And that's very hard to put into words. And we've done our best to give them succinct kind of definitions. But what's important here is that, you know, when you know this about yourself, when you know this about another person, right, you can be far more effective. And it's, you know, not just that, you know, my brother's a jerk, he's always been a jerk. Well, no, your brother values challenging the status quo. It's not personal. What he brings to the world, his great gift to the world, is to view situations very differently. And he's not trying to be a pain to you personally, but he just feels that he's contributing something when he offers up a different perspective on it. So I think in family businesses, understanding this is really, really important.